Press and hold the center power button to power on the bike. Hold the plus and minus buttons simultaneously to reach the settings menu. Scroll down and press the center button to select the battery lock page, and then press it once again to unlock and eject the battery. Place your hand below the battery to support it. Once the top end of the battery is disengaged, press the handle to release the battery and lift it out of the bike. With the bike inverted, use an 8mm hex wrench to remove the crank bolt on the non-drive side. Then thread a crank puller tool, CCP-22C or equivalent. Turn the crank puller clockwise while holding the crank arm in place. The crank arm will press off. Use an 8mm hex wrench to remove the crank bolt on the drive side. Then thread a crank puller tool, CCP-22C or equivalent. Turn the crank puller clockwise while holding the crank arm in place. The crank arm will press off. The chainring lock ring is reverse threaded. Use an ISIS bottom bracket tool to turn the lock ring clockwise to loosen and remove the chainring lock ring. Remove the chainring and the chain, and then use a 2.5mm hex wrench to remove the two bolts that secure the controller cover plate. Lift up the controller cover plate to access the connections. Disconnect the fourth plug connection. On the drive side, use a Park Tool BBT9 or similar bottom bracket tool to turn clockwise. Once unthreaded, guide the bottom bracket out of the frame and carefully remove the torque sensor cable along with it. On the non-drive side, use the bottom bracket tool to turn the bottom bracket cup counterclockwise and remove the non-drive side cup. Swap the torque sensor. Apply grease to the threads and install the non-drive side cup first. Thread it in by hand clockwise and then tighten it fully with the bottom bracket tool. Torque to 35 to 40 Newton meters. On the drive side, apply grease to the threads of the bottom bracket shell. Guide the torque sensor cable, followed by the bottom bracket torque sensor. Thread in the bottom bracket by hand, turning counterclockwise. Tighten fully with the bottom bracket tool and torque to 35 to 40 Newton meters. Reconnect the torque sensor plug into the controller by aligning the arrow and firmly pressing the plug into place. Reposition the controller and cover into place on the bike and reinstall the two mounting bolts using a 2.5mm hex wrench. Reinstall the chainring onto the spindle by aligning the teeth and pressing it on. With grease on the threads, thread the chainring lock ring on, turning counterclockwise since it is reverse threaded. Fully tighten using the ISIS bottom bracket tool. Torque to 30 Newton meters. With a thin coat of grease on the spindle, reinstall the right crank arm onto the drive side of the bottom bracket. Reinstall the crank bolt with an 8mm hex wrench and tighten until snug. Torque the crank bolt to 40 to 45 Newton meters. Reinstall the chain onto the lock ring. Clock the left side crank arm 180 degrees of the right side crank arm. With a thin coat of grease on the spindle, reinstall the left crank arm onto the non-drive side of the bottom bracket. Reinstall the crank bolt with an 8mm and torque that crank bolt to 40 to 45 Newton meters. Reinstall the battery. Press and hold the center power button to power on the bike. Press the plus button to enter a PAS mode and test the motor function with the wheel raised off the ground.